The twin suns of Karen Prime burned above the blood-red desert. Soldiers gathered near the bone flag post, their armor dented, their eyes alert. Even the wind didn't dare make noise here. They whispered her name, not out loud. Just enough for their lips to move. Veil Zora, the galaxy's most feared warrior. The one with 1,000 scars. She sat alone, sharpening a blade that had once cut through a royal war beast. Her long white hair was braided tight, and her armored body gleamed under the sun. Her left eye was metal, always scanning, always cold. She didn't speak unless needed. She didn't need to. Her presence did the talking. No one approached her. Unless they had a death wish. Then he arrived. A single human. No armor, no weapon. Just a long coat, a satchel over his shoulder, and boots too clean for this planet. He walked straight into the war camp, passing soldiers who stared in disbelief. Some reached for their weapons, unsure if he was stupid or suicidal. He stopped a few meters from her. She looked up slowly. That eye of hers flicked over him, scanning. For threat, nothing, he smiled. You look like someone who needs better food, he said, pulling out a packet of human rations. Beef jerky? Silence. Every warrior nearby froze. One of them, a brute with jagged tusks, growled under his breath. He mocks her. No, he's offering food. Veil Zora didn't blink. Didn't move. Then to everyone's shock, she stood. The ground seemed to shake beneath her. Boots as she walked to him, slowly, deliberately. The human didn't flinch. He just stood there, like this was normal. She stopped right in front of him. Her face close. Her breath cold like smoke. You are not afraid, she said, her voice deep and scarred, like something dragged from war. He tilted his head. Should I be? She said nothing for a long second. Then she took the beef jerky. Gasps echoed through the camp. She turned away and walked back to her seat. But the message was clear. Do not touch him. That night, the campfire flickered low. The human sat near the edge, quietly eating. He didn't try to talk to anyone else. But the warriors kept watching him, some with curiosity, some with hate. From a distance, Veil Zora watched her second-in-command, Captain Craze, leaned in and whispered to her, He is weak. A distraction. Shall I remove him? Her answer was sharp. Touch him, and I'll remove your spine. Even Craze stepped back. Later that night, when the camp was quiet and stars filled the sky, the human felt a presence behind him. He didn't need to turn. You always move this quiet? He asked. She sat beside him, her massive blade resting against her leg. You smile too much, she said. I get that a lot. You're not a warrior. Nope. You're not trained in combat. Only in sarcasm. A pause. Then, without warning, she pulled back a part of her armor and revealed a thick scar running from her collarbone to her ribs. You know what this is? He stared. A lesson? She raised an eyebrow. Not pity? He shook his head. Scars. Mean you survived. Doesn't get more impressive than that. For the first time in years, she let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh. Almost. You don't belong here. She finally said. Maybe not, he said, but maybe that's why I'm here. She looked at him again, deeply. For once, not as a threat, but as something else. A question. A mystery. Far away, in the shadows, one of her soldiers clenched his fist. This human ... is changing her. The next morning, the human woke to find a strange fruit beside his sleeping mat. He picked it up, smiled, and whispered, A gift? He looked toward her tent. She wasn't there. She was watching from the cliffs above, arms crossed. For the first time in decades, she didn't feel alone. But someone else had already made a decision, and tonight, blood would spill. No one knew where she had gone. Veil Zora had left the camp before dawn, leaving only silence behind. Her tent was empty. Her massive sword, always resting by her side, was gone too. Whispers spread quickly. She's never left the camp unguarded. Maybe the human cursed her. That human, still without a weapon, still smiling like he didn't know where he was, sat on a stone by the fire, calm, as if he wasn't surrounded by an army of killers. He roasted something over the flame, something that smelled sweet. Warriors stared from a distance, confused. Then she returned. Veil Zora walked into camp alone, dust covering her cloak, her face unreadable, her sword stained not with blood, but with crushed herbs. She didn't speak. She walked straight to the fire and sat beside the human. He didn't look surprised. "I made tea," he said, pouring liquid into 2 cracked mugs. "Don't ask what plant I used. Might kill you." She stared at him. He handed her the mug anyway. She took it. And drank. The silence between them was strange, not heavy, not awkward. Just new. Veil Zora finally spoke. "You confuse my warriors." "That's fine," he replied. "They confuse me too." She narrowed her eyes. "You do not act like prey. You do not posture like a warrior. What are you?" He smiled again, just slightly this time. "Someone who sees more than muscle and scars." She looked into the fire. "Muscle and scars are all I have." He leaned forward, poking the flame gently. "I don't think that's true." That night, her second-in-command, Captain Craze, met with 2 loyal soldiers in secret. "He weakens her," Craze hissed. "Every moment he's near, her edge dulls. She drinks tea now. She sits quietly. This isn't our commander." "He must be removed," one soldier said. "Tonight," Craze answered, silently. No blood spilled in camp. Back at the fire, the human pulled out a strange item from his satchel, flat, square, and worn. "What's that?" Veil Zora asked. "A photo," he said. He handed it to her. She stared at it. A picture of humans laughing, children, a dog jumping. This is your tribe?" He shook his head. "My family. Back on Earth." She studied the photo, slowly, longer than he expected. "Do you miss them?" she asked. He looked into the fire. "Every day." She handed the photo back carefully, like it might break. "You're alone here," she said. "I thought I was." Their eyes met. For once, there was no war in hers. Only a question she couldn't say out loud. Later that night, he walked back to his tent. The stars above Karen Prime were strange, like glass shattered across black water. He didn't see the shadow waiting for him. A soldier stepped out from behind a rock, quiet, fast, blade in hand. But just as the strike came, Veil Zora appeared. Her sword hit the soldier's wrist so hard it bent backward. "You touch what is mine," she growled. The camp awoke to her roar. She didn't kill the assassin. Not yet. She stared at Craze, who stood watching. "Was this your doing?" she demanded. Craze didn't answer. She looked down at the human, who even now wasn't panicking. He looked up at her and said, "Guess someone doesn't like my tea." Veil Zora turned back to the others. "Anyone else want to try?" Silence. She looked back at the human, her voice softer now. "You should sleep inside my tent tonight. It's single quotes S. safer." And so the galaxy's most feared warrior offered shelter to a human with no armor, no rank, no weapon. And for the first time in her long, brutal life, she let someone sit beside her fire. And stay. The morning sun rose over the Karen desert like a burning eye. Inside Veil Zora's tent, the air was still. She stood by the entrance, fully armored again, watching the human sleep on the floor mat. His chest moved softly, unaware of the eyes that studied him. She had allowed him into her space. No one else had entered this tent in years. Not even her second-in-command. Why did she let him in? Outside, Captain Craze sharpened his axe on a flat rock over and over, until sparks jumped into the air. His teeth clenched, his thoughts darker than ever. "The human sleeps where warriors are not allowed," he muttered. "She is blind." One of the younger warriors stepped forward. "Should we speak to her?" Craze growled. She won't listen. She's too close to him now, too human. The warrior hesitated. Then what do we do? Craze stood. We remind her who built this army. That afternoon, Veil Zora led a training session. A circle of warriors slammed weapons into the sand, muscles tense, sweat pouring. She called out movements. Her voice was sharp again, commanding. But Craze watched her differently now. The human sat nearby, taking notes on a small data pad. Every now and then, he smiled at her commands. She didn't smile back. But she noticed him. Everyone saw it. Craze couldn't take it anymore. He stepped into the ring and roared, "Commander, allow me a duel. I must test myself." She raised a brow. Against whom? He pointed. At him. Gasps spread through the ring like wildfire. The human looked up. Me? Veil Zora's expression hardened. He is not a fighter. He is something, Craze spat. Enough to cloud your judgment. She stepped forward, putting herself between them. This is not your concern. But Craze grinned. Let him decide. All eyes turned to the human. He stood slowly, brushing dust from his coat. He looked. At Veil Zora, I'll do it. She turned sharply. You'll die. He smiled. Not if I stay smart. The duel ring was drawn in the sand. No weapons. Only instinct. Craze stepped in, already cracking his knuckles. He was twice the human size. Trained. Furious. The human stepped in calmly. He didn't raise his fists. He just looked. Relaxed, Veil Zora stood at the edge, arms crossed, unreadable. The drum sounded. The duel began. Craze rushed forward. Fists like hammers. But the human ducked, rolled, moved fast. He didn't try to hit, he just dodged. Over and over, the crowd laughed at first, then watched. Then leaned in. He was tiring Craze out. Using no strength, only brains. A trip. A misstep. A twist of the foot. Craze fell face first in the dust. The human placed one foot on his back and looked up at Veil Zora. Do I pass? She didn't answer. She stepped into the ring, offered her hand, and helped him down. Craze stood, humiliated, fists shaking. Veil Zora stared him down. Next time, she said, voice like ice, aim. Your anger at the enemy, not the one who makes me. Remember who I am. That night, she sat with the human at the fire again. He held out a small scar on his wrist. He got one hit in. She traced the mark lightly with her metal finger. That's your first? First one from an alien, she smirked. It won't be your last. Silence fell between them, until he asked quietly, why didn't you stop the fight sooner? She stared into the flame. Because I needed to see if you'd run. And, she turned her head. You didn't. Far away, Craze looked up at the stars. He whispered to himself, she has changed. And deep in the shadows, he began, gathering those who still feared her more than they respected her. Asterisk. The night was colder than usual on Karen Prime. The wind blew through the cliffs like a whisper carrying secrets. The campfire flickered low, casting long shadows across the warrior. Tense, Veil Zora stood on the edge of the cliff, looking down at the sleeping camp. Her cloak wrapped tight around her frame, though cold never used to bother her. Not until now, not until he arrived. Behind her, the human climbed up the ridge slowly, his boots slipping on the loose stone. You always disappear after dark, he said. She didn't look at him. Old habit. From the war? Her eye narrowed. From every war. He sat beside her, careful not to get too close. He handed her something small, a folded cloth. I fixed this, he said. Your shoulder strap, it was fraying. She took it, fingers brushing his. No words of thanks, but she held it tighter than a blade. Below, hidden in the dark, Craze watched from behind a boulder. He wasn't alone. 3 warriors stood with him, their eyes glowing faint in the low light. Angry. Waiting. She shows weakness. Craze whispered. He infects her. She bleeds and smiles. One of the warriors asked, "When do we strike?" Craze replied, "Not yet. First, we break her from the inside." Up on the cliff, the human finally asked the question that had been burning since day one. "You've fought in, what, 30 battles? 50? She answered quietly, 72. I stopped counting after I lost my left eye. He looked at her, really looked. "Do you ever regret any of them?" She didn't answer. Not right away. Then, in a rare moment, she sat down beside him and removed her shoulder armor. Underneath was scarred skin, thick and old ridges where swords and claws had once torn through her. She touched one scar gently. "This one? I earned it protecting children. A planet you've never heard of." She tapped another. "This? I was betrayed by someone I called brother." Then, without looking at him, she asked, "Do you want to know what I regret?" He nodded. "I regret that I kept fighting long after I stopped believing in anything." The human swallowed hard. "Why keep going?" She looked at him for the first time. Her voice cracked just slightly, because stopping meant facing the silence. Silence fell between them again, but this time, it wasn't cold. She turned and asked him something he didn't expect. "Do humans carry scars you can't see?" He smiled. "Those are the worst kind." She nodded slowly, like she understood. More than she let on. Then she stood. "Come, I want to show you something." She led him into a hidden cave beneath the cliffs. Lit only by glowing moss, the walls were covered in old carvings. "They're mine," she said. "Each line a kill, each mark a memory I couldn't carry in my mind anymore." He ran his fingers across the stone. "There are hundreds." She didn't respond. He turned to her. "And yet, here you are, still standing." She looked at him, and for the first time her voice broke into something soft. "Until you, I thought I was already dead." Back at camp, Craze found what he was waiting for. In the human's tent, hidden beneath the bedding, was a small glowing orb. He lifted it with a cruel smile. A memory core, one that contained something. "Forbiddens." He held it up to the moonlight. "Let's see how she feels after this." The night was quiet. Too quiet. Not even the wind dared move across the sands of Karen Prime. Inside her tent, Veil Zora stood still as stone, arms crossed, eyes locked on the human sleeping peacefully on the floor mat. His breathing was calm. He looked so fragile. She hated how much she noticed that now. Far across camp, Craze watched from the shadows. The memory orb he'd stolen from the human's satchel glowed in his palm. He pressed it against the side of his communicator, and a shimmering image lit up in front of him. A recording, a human voice. Her voice, laughing, crying. "Please, if there's anyone left out there, this message is my last." Craze's smile twisted. This wasn't a soldier's log. This was personal. And if the human carried it, it meant he was hiding something. Back in the tent, Veil Zora stirred. Something wasn't right. Her warrior senses flared, an old instinct from decades of ambushes. She reached for her blade, but paused. Instead, she knelt beside the human and brushed her hand near his forehead, not touching, just close enough to feel his warmth. She whispered, "Why do I fear losing someone I haven't claimed?" Minutes later, she left the tent. She had patrol duties. He was safe, she thought. Craze moved quickly. 2 drops of Varn's, spider rare venom from the ice serpents of Zel 9, were enough to stop a warrior's heart. He slid the vial's contents into the human's water flask and placed it back carefully. Then he vanished into the shadows. Moments later, the human woke up. Thirsty. He sat up, stretched, and took a long drink from his flask. He didn't even notice the bitter taste. He smiled, thinking about her again, but the smile faded fast. His fingers twitched, then curled. He gasped, like someone had punched all the air from his chest. He fell forward, eyes wide, lips trembling. No scream, no noise. Just silence. Outside, Veil Zora's breath caught. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. She turned and sprinted back toward camp. She found him collapsed on the floor, convulsing. Dying. Her mind froze, but only for a second. Then she was beside him, turning him over, shouting his name. He couldn't speak. His eyes locked on hers. Fear. Pain. End. Something worse. Trust. She roared for the healer. None came. She grabbed her blade and sliced open the tent's back flap. With one arm, she lifted him like he weighed nothing and ran into the desert, her boots smashing against the rock. She didn't stop for breath, didn't look back. She ran until the camp disappeared behind her. Hours passed. She reached a human outpost, half abandoned, barely functioning, but the medic was still there. They rushed him into the medical pod. Tubes, scanners, lights flashing red. She stood outside the chamber. Not as a warrior, not as a leader, but as something she didn't recognize. She whispered to herself, "If he dies, I go with him." The medic approached her slowly. "He's stable," she said, "but only just. Someone poisoned him with something ancient, nasty. It wasn't random." Veil Zora's eye glowed hot. She didn't respond. She turned to the cliffs behind her and walked back into the dark. Karen Prime was about to bleed again. But this time, it would be her own army. The desert wasn't quiet anymore. Veil Zora's footsteps echoed through the war camp like thunder. Every soldier stopped what they were doing. No one dared speak. She walked straight through the middle, sword on her back, cloak flapping behind her like a storm. Her face was unreadable, but her eyes? Rage, ice, fire. Cray stood by the armory, pretending to check supplies. She walked right up to him and dropped the empty poison vial at his feet. It shattered between them. "You failed," she said flatly. Cray didn't flinch. "I don't know what that is." "You poisoned him," he smirked. "You have no proof." Veil Zora leaned in, her voice so low only he could hear it. "He will wake up. And when he does, I want him to see your blood on the ground." Then she stepped back and shouted to the warriors, "Gather everyone, now." The army formed a circle, every warrior, every eye. She stepped into the center. "For years, I led you through fire and ash. I never flinched, I never failed. And I never asked for mercy." She pointed to the sky. "That human saved me from becoming a machine. He reminded me I'm more than scars and commands." Whispers rippled through the crowd. He was nearly murdered, not by an enemy. Not in battle, but here, among us. She turned to Craze. "He will stand trial." Craze stepped forward, arms wide, defiant. "I built this army beside you. I protected your name when others spit on it. And you choose him over me?" Her sword was drawn before he finished the last word. "I don't choose him," she growled. "I choose truth." Back at the outpost, the human opened his eyes. His breath was weak, chest rising slowly. The medic leaned over him. "You're lucky to be alive," he blinked. "Where?" "She brought you here, carried you through the night. You should have died." He turned his head, eyes finding the empty space beside him. "She's not here?" The medic smiled softly. "No, she went back. Said she had to burn down the rot." The human sat up slowly, pain shooting through his chest. He winced, but then grinned. She always did prefer sharp solutions. Back at camp, Craze stood surrounded. "You've changed," he hissed. She stared at him. "You haven't. That's your curse." He lunged. She met him mid-air. Their swords clashed like thunder cracking the sky. The duel was brutal. Fists, blades, blood. But it wasn't close. She was better, faster, angrier, clearer. She slammed him to the ground and pointed the blade to his throat. He spat. "You've gone soft." She whispered, "No, I've just finally chosen who I want to be." And she let him live. The camp gasped. "Exile him," she said. "Let him live with the shame." Craze was dragged away, screaming. That night, the fire burned again. The human walked back into the camp slow, sore, but smiling. She saw him from her tent, for the first time. She ran straight to him, no words, just silence. She grabbed him by the coat, held his face, and pressed her forehead to his. "You're alive," she breathed. He chuckled. "Barely, you carried me?" "Through a sandstorm. Romantic." She laughed, a real laugh. Then she said, "Come with me." "To your tent?" "No." She looked up at the stars. "To the war that's still coming." The sky over Karen Prime cracked with the sound of engines. Drops, hips massive. Black, silent descended through the atmosphere like falling blades. No warning, no message, no mercy. Veil Zora watched from the cliff, her cloak snapping behind her in the rising wind. Her army stood behind her, tents ready, beside her. The human adjusted the strap on his small satchel. "You sure you want me here?" he asked. She didn't look at him. "You're already here." He grinned. "That's not a no." Hours earlier, they had decoded the memory core Craze had stolen. Inside was a distress signal from an old human colony. But there was more. Something. No one expected. Coordinates. A target. Veil Zora's camp. Whoever sent that signal had invited death. And now death was coming. The first wave hit fast. Unmanned. Drones sleek and sharp rained from the sky. Her warriors met them with blades and blasters, the sand turning black with oil and blood. Veil Zora moved through the chaos like fire given form. Every strike was perfect. Every kill clean, but the human wasn't watching her. He was planting signal disruptors across the ridge, dodging explosions, using his small size and quick steps to stay alive. One warrior fell, another screamed. The line was cracking, and then the mothership arrived, a shadow so big it swallowed the stars. From its belly, a massive walker dropped to the surface, armed, armored, unstoppable. The warriors backed up. Some faltered, but Veil Zora did not. She turned to the human. "Do you still carry that detonator?" He nodded. "Modified last night." "You trust it?" "No," she smirked. "Good." They ran together. Her sword lit with plasma. His detonator blinking red in his palm. They charged the walker head-on. One towering alien warrior and one reckless human in a dusty coat. The machine opened fire. They split apart. She drew its attention. He slipped underneath. Smoke, screams, sparks, flying. Then, boom. A shockwave ripped across the camp. Silence followed. Dust settled. The walker gone. So was the human. Veil Zora stood there, blood dripping down her brow, scanning the rubble. Her hands trembled, not from fear, from something worse. Lost. Double quotes. Where is he? She muttered. Then, movement. From the smoke. He crawled out, coughing, clothes torn, face covered in ash. She ran to him and dropped to her knees. "You idiot," she whispered. "You're welcome," he croaked. Later, the camp rebuilt what it could, but something had changed. Not just in the camp. In her. She sat with him at the fire, shoulder touching his. "Once," she said, "I lived for war. And now," she looked at him, "now I live for what comes after." He smiled. "Does that include me?" She didn't answer. She just leaned in, rested her forehead on his, and whispered, "Try running. I'll find you." Above them, the stars burned quietly. Warriors trained again. The fire cracked, and in the shadows of a once-broken galaxy, the deadliest warrior it had ever known sat beside the only human who had ever dared walk straight up to her and never flinch.